Ladies, gentlemen, and rogues of all ages, Season 4 is exactly 24 hours away from the release at the time of this video is going up, and I know a common question when preparing for the start of a season is, what am I going to play? Especially this season, and I don't mean me, you're not asking me, but you. What are you going to play? And not necessarily class, but even down to build. So today we are of course going to dive into the best build for leveling, specifically when it comes to Rogue in Season 4. And this is based off of a couple of major factors this season. The first one is that the season journey rewards will be much better this season than they've been in the past, focused specifically around essentially giving you a build's worth of legendaries before you finish it, and each class is getting these aspects based around a specific setup, a specific kind of synergy, a sort of build, which makes these builds sort of the easiest to put together as a result, quite simply. That said, the other main consideration that makes this different from past seasons is the best leveling method, which is actually going to be helltide. Specifically, helltide is incredible for leveling in the new version in its new form, but this also doubles up as the season journey will require you to do helltide, and so no matter what, you're going to be spending a lot of your early game experience in a wide, expansive, open field of a zone with high enemy density and spawn rates, which does have a genuine effect on some of our choices, including favoring movement speed quite a bit, and trash clearing even more than you normally would in a leveling build. That said, it's worth mentioning that the footage you've been seeing in the background is of course on live servers. This is not the PTR, this is not Season 4, so you're missing a whole lot of the power that would be emphasized in this. It's just to give you a general idea of what the gameplay would look like as a basis, but there's a lot of things that are being added in the new season to make this build quite a bit better than it currently looks. That said, we will start off with your skill points and where you want to put them, then we'll go over the specialization of choice for this once you've unlocked them, and then we'll talk about the 3 legendary aspects that you'll want to keep on your jewelry slots the whole way while you level, and we'll also talk about how you can expand on those to make the set more full and rounded once you have more resources and more stable equipment that isn't being swapped every 5 minutes. Without further ado then, for your basic skill, you'll want to start by taking Puncture. They've tried various times to make the other basic skills better, and don't get me wrong, they are way better than they used to be, but Puncture still is unique in its function, especially with Enhanced Puncture, and then also Fundamental Puncture being added on top of that. It gives you a way to get energy, and it also gives you a way to just apply Vulnerable consistently, especially early game, which is incredible. Then for our main actual core skill, we are going to be taking Barrage. As this mentioned earlier, we are getting a bunch of synergistic legendary aspects in Season 4 to push us towards certain builds in the season journey, and the ones that Rogue are going to get early on are for a Barrage build, which is a pretty solid build in general, but far more so if you're given it free early on, essentially. We're also of course going to be taking Enhanced Barrage for some guaranteed ricochets against vulnerable enemies or if you crit them, and we're also going to be taking Advanced Barrage, which gives you even more critical strike chance when you get multiple ricochets with Barrage, which of course matches really well with the fact that we'll be doing helltide as our main leveling activity. Lots of AoE means lots of ricochets, which means even more crit chance. With that then, we unlock the agility node cluster over here, and we're just going to be getting a couple of base abilities without any actual upgrades, both Shadow Step and then Dash, because basically you just want to have these together as an extremely potent source of movement speed even without their upgrades. And again, as mentioned, movement speed is more important than it normally would be because helltide is just a big open zone densely packed with enemies, so ground speed actually does matter. After that, we will be putting 3 more points into Barrage itself to both up our damage in our main core skill, but also to unlock the defensive cluster over here, in which we can get Dark Shroud, as well as Enhanced Dark Shroud, which gives you a nice chance for shadows to not be consumed. And then personally, I think countering Dark Shroud is actually better for leveling this time around. Crit chance is much harder to come by early game than it is later on, so it is quite valuable while leveling. On top of that, while movement speed is extremely important, which would be why you would take Subverting Shroud, and you could do that, it is a choice you could make, we already have both Shadow Step and Dash, and that genuinely should be more than enough movement to make helltide specifically a breeze to traverse, so I think the damage is worth it really. After that, we take our final rank of Barrage up here for maximum ranks on this skill, which gives you the furthest that you can get with your core skill itself, and then we're going to be taking 1 rank of Weapon Mastery over here to increase your vulnerable damage with bows or crit damage with crossbows. Generally, I'd absolutely recommend that you use crossbows anyways, and with this, the vulnerable innate damage from them is great, and then the crit damage bonus from Weapon Mastery for crossbows is nice too. At this point, we unlock Imbuements, which are of course going to be extremely important for the build, and we're going to be grabbing Shadow Imbuement as our last active skill, as well as Enhanced Shadow Imbuement for bonus crit chance against injured and imbued enemies, and then Blended Shadow Imbuement to make the Shadow Explosions apply vulnerable as well, letting us chain really effectively from enemy to enemy in group scenarios. This also lets us take 1 rank of Shadow Crash here, mostly just as a gateway for 3 ranks of Consuming Shadows, which gives us energy anytime an enemy dies to shadow damage, which lets us just cast more and thus do more damage. Then we take the remaining 2 ranks of Weapon Mastery up here. We pick up the first rank of Exploit here for bonus damage to healthy and injured enemies, also as a gateway to 3 ranks of Malice for 9% bonus damage to vulnerable enemies, and then we just fill out the other 2 ranks of Exploit again for the more damage bonus there. Then you want to move over to get the first 2 ranks of Precision Imbuement right here, which will give you bonus critical strike chance on imbued skills. This is extra important, as it's worth mentioning there is a Tempering Affix in the resource slot that gives you bonus skill casts per imbuement, and you have 3 that you can actually have these in for a maximum of 6 bonus casts per imbue, which would mean you could cast 8 barrages per shadow imbuement cooldown, all imbued, and all getting the crit chance bonus as well, which importantly also affects your energy gain because every one of those is giving you a ton of energy as you're killing enemies with them. All of this just sort of works together in an extremely potent way that is just sort of hard to actually deny. Then you move on and actually unlock our key passives as a result of those last points, which lets us pick up Precision. This gives us loads of guaranteed crits and heftier damage when those crits proc, and this double dips into our bonus crit damage stat too, which is absolutely lovely. Follow that by just finishing up Precision Imbuement over here for that 1 point. Then we want to grab 1 rank of Adrenaline Rush for a bit of energy regeneration, but also as a gateway for 3 ranks of Impetus over here, which gives you bonus damage on your next core skill cast every time that you move 12 meters, which again will be happening a lot while the Helltide is being main activity while leveling. Then 3 ranks of Haste as well for bonus movement speed at high energy and bonus attack speed at low energy. We follow it up by just sticking 4 points into Dark Shroud to actually pop this off and increase your damage reduction. Then we're going to be taking some enhancements in our agility skills that we have taken finally. Enhanced Shadow Step for even more crit chance against the specific enemies that you target with this, which is great specifically for single target if you ever need to do that. And then Disciplined Shadow Step for cooldown reduction when used on a different enemy, letting you have more movement more often. Then we grab Enhanced Dash for bonus critical damage against any enemies that you hit with it, as well as Methodical Dash actually this time around for cooldown reductions on the dash itself, which we then follow by increasing dash ranks to 3 for just a little bit more cooldown reduction on it, which leaves us with the perfect amount of remaining skill points to pick up 3 ranks of Sturdy for a nice amount of close damage reduction, which is very effective, as well as 3 ranks of Siphoning Strikes for healing on crits against close enemies, which is generally how you want to use Barrage anyways, especially in larger groups. Moving on from that then we have our Specialization of choice, and this one is usually pretty easy for leveling builds. It's combo points, of course. Very simply, you won't have the gear to support the other 2 specialization options while leveling, and further than that, while leveling you will have worse resource generation than you would at higher levels, which means using more basic skills, which means generating more combo points and thus good damage. So combo points is generally just the favored choice for leveling builds on Rogue. With all that covered then, let's dive into your Legendaries and Gear in general, and your 3 leveling Legendaries of choice are of course going to be important to the setup, and as mentioned earlier, these will be going on your jewelry slots, as these are the least damaging to not switch out frequently early game when you are constantly having upgrades drop. The first and highest priority one is the aspect of branching volleys. You want this on your amulet slot, ideally as soon as you can. This increases the ricochet damage from barrage in general, but also gives the arrows a chance to split when ricocheting for even more spreading damage, and this just adds a ton of multi-target extra damage to barrage, and for like the 10th time, Helltide is the way this season to level, so this is really good. Then we have on one ring the brand new aspect of high velocity. This should be in the season journey rewards relatively early, and this simply makes barrage arrows also pierce one enemy each, which is pretty cool, as well as having up to 20% increased attack speed, which is fantastic for us as well. Then the third slot should be the aspect of the expectant for extra damage with core skills for each basic skill that you cast in between, which of course combos extremely well with our specialization of combo points, making those damage bonuses always apply together and multiply off of each other, which is lovely. Past that, then we should talk about how to expand and improve this as you level up if you want to keep running the same barrage build, for when you have more resources and somewhat more stable gear too. Once you have a crossbow you plan on sticking with for a long time, you want to move branching volleys over to there of course, then you can put Edge Master on your amulet for bonus damage at high energy, synergizing again with our setup quite well. You can also add on the rapid aspect for faster punctures, which is pretty nice, mostly for the energy gain that you get on hit against crowd-controlled enemies, and then something like the accelerating aspect is also great with our crit focus too. Defensively speaking, Juggernaut is just going to be top tier for everyone, and then second best for that is going to be Might, which is fantastic in this build as we are using basic attacks often, so the damage reduction is always active, really. Then finally, let's talk about a new part of builds coming in this season, which is tempering affixes. Generally speaking, these will be numerical, statistical, statistical increases to your numbers, but there are a couple of different categories that can get somewhat build defining, honestly. So specifically, I want to talk about your weapon tempering slots and your resource tempering slots. As for weapons, Rogue has a big advantage in that it has 3 different weapons, each of which being able to be tempered separately. The unquestionably best weapon temper for this setup is Barrage Bonus Projectile Cast Chance. What this is literally a 17.5% chance to double cast the entire skill. Keep in mind, this is double the potency on a 2-handed weapon, so 35% chance, and you can also have it on both of your one-handed weapons, which would make it another 35% chance between those, so total 70% chance to double cast Barrage every time you press the button, which is actually nuts if you can get those full maximum rolls and actually reach that. Then for the resource tempering slots, you pretty unquestionably want imbuement charge increases. What this does is let you just cast more imbued skills each time you press an imbuement button, and if you get this high enough and get your cooldown reduction high enough as well, you can actually just sort of permanently be using imbued skills every time you press any of your skills, which is really good. These are less good for mixed imbuement builds because you can only specialize into one at a time, but when we are just using Shadow like we are, and we're really trying to capitalize as much as we can on our area of effect damage, this is really potent. And then that just about does it for today, really, everyone. Your starter leveling build for Rogue for Season 4. This should be genuinely very strong, especially if you can get the tempering manuals to drop that really boosted, but even without them, it will just clean house and have extremely high movement to keep you traveling from pack to pack without any issues. I hope you've all enjoyed this then, and I wish you the best of luck in your leveling journey upon release. Like if you liked the video, subscribe and hit the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world our stage. Goodbye.